I saw your other guy. So where are you from?
I don't.
I know we're all excited to be here. So thank you for coming. This is the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. This is the Bidders Conference. So if you're not in the right place, you can leave now or stay and listen with us. But this is for the new applications for the 2018-2019 school year. So I'm Camille Sheik. I oversee this program. I also help support the IGP after school grant programs. And I'm going to introduce some of my colleagues here at USBE. It's always
I'm Commander Grant. I do fiscal compliance.
My name is Becky Peters. I'm Secretary of Support for the Programs Department.
Hi, I'm Robert Palmer. I'm an educational specialist here at USBE. I also work with Partnerships for Student Success and with IGB.
And we also have Dr. Donaldson, who is our coordinator over federal and state programs. Had some technical difficulties with the microphone. So just some background on the 21st Century Grant. It is federal funding. It's authorized under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, as reauthorized by ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, and it's an opportunity for school districts, charter schools, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations to participate in out-of-school time activities. So before school, after school, summer. I think summer is really something we want to emphasize with this application, is that focus on summer learning. For students who attend schools that have poverty levels, so free and reduced price lunch rates of 40% or higher. So this is for anything outside of the regular school hours. And I know there's been a lot of questions with the funding, but what we do know right now, so we have funding for this school year, the 2018-2019 school year. The funding is secured, and the Senate has passed the budget, their budget, which includes education. Now it has to go to the House. So we're hoping that by October 1st, fingers crossed, if the House can agree, that will get pushed through. But it's looking promising. The 21st Century program overall was funded at the same level in previous years, so there's been no cuts. Congress has supported the funding in the past, even though the president's budget has wanted to eliminate it. So it's looking promising. Hopefully we'll get that budget for the 2019 school year. So 2019.
1920 is the funding right.
Yes, so we have 18-19, so 19-20. So we can secure it for yet another year because it is a 5-year grant. So just some background on the funding.
What happens if we don't get funding and you do receive a 5-year grant? You're not going to get funding in the second year then, essentially?
So if that happens, we technically have 27 months to expend the funding we do have. So we would just spend that funding down as much as we could. But it's looking promising, and we would do what we can to make sure we spend the money we do have. So, Sandy, do you have anything else to add about what happens if it doesn't come through?
Well, if there's no funding, we have no money to give you back. I mean, that's the bottom line. So it just depends on what happens in Congress and what they decide to do with funding. But right now, in the preliminary budgets we've seen, it's level funded. So we'll get funding for next year. And so as people go off their 5-year cycle, then we have extra money then to give out for the new ones. So, but we always fund anything that is continuing, like if you're in your second year, those always get funded first. And then we look at what's left over for new grants.
So again, those focus areas are anything that supports out-of-school time hours. So really focusing on the academic subjects such as math, reading, science, and aligning what you're doing in after school with what's happening during the school day. And then making sure you're having other activities, like enrichment activities that complement the school day. Because it's very important. The academic piece is critical, but so is the enrichment activities, and having those. Because you don't want to go to school for another 2 hours, but having project-based learning, experiential learning, things like that you can bring in during the out-of-school time hours. And then supporting families as well. And that's going to look different in each community, that family engagement piece. So the competition for this year, the 2018-2019 school year, as I mentioned, this is a 5-year grant cycle. The total funding available is a little over $3 million. So this is more than we've had in other years. So we're excited. We want to fund some new programs, different areas. It's exciting to have this much funding. So over $3 million. And just because we are late, as we've talked about, this is very late in the school year. It's already going to be September tomorrow. So, but this is funding for the 2018-2019 school year. So if you have activities, so you're funded, you write your application, you're funded, and you have activities that support the plan, costs, if you have documentation, can be reimbursed starting in July 2018. So you can go back as long as those activities support your plan that's approved. So keep that in mind. I also want to highlight summer programs if possible. I think that's a great opportunity to focus on summer. If you can swing that in your community, I know it's harder to work it out with schools and other community-based organizations where the summer program might be happening, but I would really emphasize summer programs in your plan if you can. So all of the proposed program sites must be at 40% or more poverty rate, so free and reduced price lunch. The minimum amount you need to apply for is $100,000. That's just kind of baseline, because we want to cover things like staff, transportation, evidence-based curriculum, being able to align with the school day. So $100,000 is the minimum amount. There's no maximum amount right now. So it's just based on your need. What does your community need? We have a question?
is the minimum amount of 100,000 for the 5-year grant cycle, or is that per year? That's probably for the 5-year grant cycle.
It's per year, so I'm going to go through that in just a bit.
Okay. Thank you.
So each organization can submit one new application and one reapplication. And I'll go into what that means in just a bit. And no more than 8 program sites can be included in an application. 8 is really the max we see just from a management perspective and making sure you're capturing all the needs of the community. So you commit to a 5-year grant cycle, minimum grant of $100,000. There's a reduction in year 4, this is to say, so 75%, so you'll get a reduction of 25% in that year 4, and then in year 5, you'll have a 50% reduction. But you must maintain the level of service for all 5 of those years. So working with your school district, other local youth-serving organizations to try to maintain that level of service. So this is for the new application. So anyone who hasn't had an application before, who hasn't submitted an application before, who's received no 20% refunds, this would be an example of your 5-year cycle. So you apply for $100,000 for, let's say, 2 sites. So years 1 through 3, you have $100,000, and then in year 4, you have that 25% reduction. So you go to $75,000, still maintaining the same level of services, and then in year 5, you have the $50,000. So that's a new application. So if you've never received 21st century funding before for certain sites, then that's what you would apply for.
This example, is it per site or if I'm applying for 8 sites?
This is overall your whole whatever amount of sites you're applying for. So the reapplication. How many of you have received 21st century grant funding before in the room? Okay, so this is for you. You can do, if you received funding before, you can do a new application and you can do a reapplication. And the reapplication has worked different than in the years past. So if you want to continue the project goals and outcomes of a previously funded 21st century grant that ended in either 2016-2017 school year, so we didn't release funding that year, or will ended last school year, 2017-2018, you can reapply to fund that project, and your first year of funding, or your first through 3rd years of funding, would be whatever the amount you were awarded in year 5. So when you have that 50% reduction. So your original grant award was let's see, math is not my strong point, $150,000. That was your original grant award you applied for. And then in year 5, you went down to the $75,000, the 50% reduction. Then you could reapply again at $75,000 and receive that for 3 years, and then have a reduction of 25% in the 4th year and a reduction of 50% in the 5th year.
Because there was that year gap when we didn't do it, if there was a grant in the 2016-2017, but that was in, one of the schools was involved in that grant, but then there was that time, can you include one of those schools as a whole brand new grant, again, since there's been a break of time? Because normally, as long as there was a year in between, you could write them as a whole new with new objectives and stuff.
Probably what happens is that then becomes a new grant, not a reapplication.
Well, right, that's what
reapplication implies that you're using the same sites, the same schools, just continuing on that grant you had originally. So
okay, you include a school from that into a brand new
right.
Okay.
Then it becomes a part of that grant.
Yeah, so that could be your new
instead of being. Yeah, you don't have to do them as a renewal.
Yes.
Okay.
We're calling it reapplication because I think it was called before continuation, but that is confusing because we call our grantees in years 2 through 5 continuation grants, so we want to call it something different.
Okay, if your grant ended last year, then I could do a reapplication for one of those schools. If that school was on a grant that included 4 schools, do I have to do all 4 schools or can I do just one?
Reapplication implies it's the same group of schools. You're taking the grant that you had before you're going to just reapply with that same grant, with the same goals, with the same information.
Does that help clarify? You have to apply for all the same. So to Courtney's question, you have to reapply for all the same sites and the same goals and the same outcomes. Because you're just continuing that on, but you have a smaller pot.
One of the reasons for the decrease in funding is that originally 21st Century was supposed to be self-sustaining after the 5th year. And so they want you to start planning in those first 3 years where you're going to get that extra money for each of the next years so you can continue that same grant.
So those are the 2 types of applications. So this is the grant award timeline. The grant opened on August 10th. You have all the application documents, and after we have a few different presenters, we're going to go over the application documents, you know, any questions you might have about the narrative questions or what needs to be included, how you need to submit your documents. So we're going to go over all of that. Thank you for coming to the Bidders Conference today. Now this is very important. So by September 7th, if you want to apply for the grant and have your application be considered for funding, you need to submit a letter of intent using the form. So please make sure, submit something. So we have that helps us know how many readers to get, how much funding we anticipate we're going to spend, basing that off the number of applications submitted. So please, please, please submit your letter of intent by September 7th, and it is a Google form. Application documents are due September 21st by 11:59 p.m., and you're going to submit all of those to an email. So not my email, it's the afterschoolgrant@schools.utah.gov. So please, I would encourage you, if you can, submit them beforehand. You never know what could go wrong, because I'm just going to go through the applications that are submitted, and you need to really get them in before midnight on September 21st. Courtney.
Sorry, another question. If you're doing a reapplication and a brand new, would you do 2 letters of intent then, listing the schools that you're going to do for each class?
Great clarification.
Would you repeat what she just said, please?
So if you're going to do 2 applications, you're currently receiving 21st Century funds, and you want to do a reapplication and a new application, you need to submit 2 letters of intent. The grant review period will start Monday, September 24th and go through October 29th. That will be when all of your grants are with the readers, and we'll go over what will be part of that grant review process. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll be notified the week of October 29th. So the total application is worth 239 points. There's about 39 competitive priority points, so those are additional priority points. We're going to go into what the documentation is required for those additional competitive priority points, just so you know and you can submit everything you can, because I've seen grant competitions where it's like 1 point that separates the person who is funded versus the person who is not, and if you don't have that documentation and you didn't submit it when you emailed me all of your application documents, we can't fund you. So we're going to go over that, and you can ask any questions you want. We can talk about what can be submitted for the documentation, especially for those competitive priority points. The rubric was released last week. That is what the grant readers will use. They'll use that rubric. Everything will go back to the rubric and what was specified in the application packet. So really, when you're writing, review the rubric, make sure that you're hitting all the points that question asks, that the rubric is talking about, because that's what our grant readers are going to use. And so they'll be read by a qualified group of readers who have youth development experience managing grants. We really vet our readers, and we want people who are familiar with programming, youth development programming, after school programming, and who understand how the grant process works. And they also receive quite a bit of training on what you're receiving training on today. So the application packet, how the process worked for submitting your documents, the rubric, so we have some in-depth training for those readers. This is a breakdown of the total application points. So you can see the major areas. submission requirements. As I said, you must submit your letter of intent. The link will be added to our website, and I will send it out to everyone who attended today. So you have the link to submit that letter of intent. And these are all the application documents that are due September 21st by 11:59 to that email. So first you'll need the grant application, and you'll need that in PDF form fill, so you'll need to download that application from the website and make sure you save it on your computer and you'll fill it in there. Now I know previously there had been some issues with the signature page, so if you wanted to do the signature page separately and then submit your actual application PDF form fill, that's fine. Just let me know if you're having any issues with that, so I know when the documents come in that I'll receive an application packet as well as a separate signature page, because I know sometimes, depending on the version of Adobe you have, the signature, the electronic signature doesn't always work. So we can have separate submissions there, yes.
You can use an electronic signature?
Yes, an electronic signature can be used, but it's such a large PDF form fill that at times the signatures don't work. So you can submit a separate signature page and then your separate application PDF form fill. So you'll do your PDF form fill, you'll do your grant budget narrative as Excel. So that will align with your budget narrative question in the application. This is detailing out, this is why this is how much we're spending on salaries for staff, and this is why. So those two should align. You need to have partnership letters from district or school, and these can be PDF, scanned documents, Word documents, just having something from the schools that you're gonna serve. Have something from the principal, from the school district. Those are very helpful to have, and they are scored. Then having your absolute priority documentation. So the absolute priority, the minimum requirement for this grant is that all the schools that are proposed to be served need to be at 40% poverty level, so free and reduced price lunch rate. So we need that documentation to verify. This is very targeted funding for youth attending schools that are at 40% poverty level. So please send that documentation that's required. And again, that can be an Excel document, PDF document, scanned or Word document. It could be a letter from the principal, whatever it is that you can pull it from the data gateway, you can pull it from child nutrition, but we need to have some kind of documentation for that. And then your priority points documentation, and when we pull up the application, we'll go through that. But we do need to have all that documentation. And then so for my community-based organizations, you need to send your approved indirect cost rate. So whatever that is, you need to submit your letter or some kind of documentation showing what your indirect cost rate is. Now, for institutions of higher education, unfortunately for this year, the 2018-2019 school year, you cannot charge indirect cost rates. So just universities and colleges, it's been determined by our financial operations division that they will not be able to charge indirect cost rates for that. They're trying to work out the policy and the statute, so maybe next year you could, but right now that's the guidance I've been given. Kate?
Camille, if we don't have an approved indirect cost rate, because everything that we've submitted says it's either 10% or your approved rate, do we need to get an approved rate to submit?
Let's talk after about the process, and I'm going to send follow-up with community-based providers about that.
Okay.
There's not a lot of guidance about that, whether you can charge, because I know you might charge up to 10, or if you have to have that approved indirect cost rate. So let's talk after.
Okay.
And I'll follow up with the community-based organizations.
Okay.
Well, just to clarify, for universities, if they have a federally approved indirect cost rate, they cannot use that?
Not for this funding for this year. Okay. And I can follow up with you, but that's the guidance I've been given as of Wednesday from our financial operations division. Okay. Thank you. They said there's a chance next year, but for this year, no. Okay.
What if we are not planning on incorporating any indirect costs? Then do we still need to have that?
Okay, good.
Perfect.
And then, as I mentioned, please be sure to send everything to the email. And if you send it to my email, I get a lot of emails. So really, after school grants at schools.utah.gov, I would hate to lose your application. Sometimes emails, for whatever reason, don't get to me, but I know it will come here. So please send it there.
For the absolute priority point, can I pull it out from the website?
Yeah, you can pull it from the Data Gateway, from Child Nutrition. So anything showing that you're at that overall for the school at the 40% poverty level.
Will there be somebody or something that's at this that will send something saying, got it? You know, okay.
Yeah, I will follow up with everyone, and if
we
you
used to
don't
drive it down here and like hand it in.
So you just need to send it electronically, and if you don't hear from me or anything, just call me or email me. We'll make sure that it's submitted. But I would advise to submit early. So just with this funding, this is all about after-school funding. We're all about aligning with the school day, supporting quality programs. I wanted to bring to your attention Rule R277, 715, out-of-school time standard, program standards, which passed in 2016. So Senator Escamilla passed this to really codify what are quality standards for after-school program. And that's really what we base the quality improvement efforts. We work closely with Department of Workforce Services, Office of Child Care. We contract out for technical assistance with the Utah After School Network because we need programs that are quality, because that's where you're going to show these outcomes. That's where you're going to show the impact. Students improving academically, students having less behavior referral. It's from quality programs, quality staff. So I wanted to bring this to your attention. That the standards are codified. So having safe programs is part of that. Having programs that teach students new skills, building those relationships in programs, those key relationships, the staff between the youth and the youth to youth, building those strong relationships, and then having a strong administration to support the management of the program. This can be a complex grant. And so you need, good people to understand why after school is so important. And it's not an afterthought, that this is really important. So you need that strong administration to make sure that they don't forget about after school. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention, and this is really how we design our quality improvement efforts and the system we've built with Department of Workforce Services, Office of Child Care, and the Utah After School Network is around this continuous quality improvement model. So this is the USBE code for that. If you are awarded the funding, these are your grant award responsibilities. So attending the annual grant orientation, and that's just to make sure we're all on the same page. You have all the information you need to fulfill your requirements for federal and state level reporting. So making sure you're collecting data on student achievement and that progress towards your program goals and that periodic program evaluation, that's key. Making sure, because the big part of this grant is aligning your program services with what are the needs of your community and making sure you're still providing those services your community needs. So having that periodic program evaluation, collecting and submitting your data to the federal reporting system, and the federal reporting system we use for 21st century is called 21 APR. It's really critical that we get good data. We need good data in because all of that data is submitted to our federal partners and then they present that data to Congress. And that's how they make decisions regarding funding. So it's really critical that you're collecting good data, that we're submitting it timely, so then we can show Congress, yes, these programs are helping. They are supporting students in achieving academically. They're supporting families. So that's why we need to be sure we have good data in, good data out. And then you'll submit a continuation application. So in years 2 through 5, we have the continuation application. So you won't have to go through a competitive review process, but the continuation application is an update to how you're still meeting your program goals and outcomes, and then a budget every year. You'll participate in technical assistance with the Utah After School Network and complete the quality tool, which Utah After School Network will talk about in a bit, and or an observation tool. So the quality tool is a self-assessment, and I think that's a really critical piece towards that continuous cycle of quality improvement, but we also are moving to an observation tool that's really gonna help your program to see, okay, these are areas that we're good, but these are areas we could be even better in. So we're moving towards not only having the quality tool self-assessment, but also enhancing that and having the observation tool. And then any federal or state level evaluations, we had a state level evaluation a couple years ago, so making sure you're going to participate in that, that's a grant requirement. And then really reporting your progress to your communities that you serve and seeking community support and feedback.
Regarding the budget, so if let's say that I apply for 100,000, spend it all, if there's any, can I carry it over?
Yeah, so I'll talk about carryover in just a bit. Yes, we do allow for some carryover. So in terms of program evaluation requirements, they don't specify that you have to do an evaluation every year or every 2 years. It's periodic evaluation around the principles of effectiveness. So what is, how is your program doing at meeting the needs of your community? So it's kind of based on what you need in your community with how you do that periodic evaluation, but it is a requirement to have some kind of periodic evaluation in your grant application that you will carry out. So you're making sure that you're refining and improving the strength of the program and that you're making it available to the public. So highlighting the good things you're doing. It's not really defined what you need to do, but you need to have some kind of evaluation aspect in there. So this is a little diagram of the monitoring and evaluation and some of the due dates. So 21 APR, this has been the typical window. It changes from year to year, so I'll try to give you as much notice with that. As Tino mentioned, we do allow for carryover, and so you can carry over under 25% each year, but if you want to carry over more than 25% of your funding, that can only happen once every 3 years. I anticipate with awards this year, we are going to have more than 25% carryover for some programs, so you are able to carry that over. And you submit information, you'll submit a plan, just to make sure it aligns with the approved proposal. So that's carryover. And we talked about continuation application of budgets. That's typically in the spring. Periodic program evaluations are ongoing. And then there might be some desk audits. I might call you about an invoice. I know you're all busy, but we might schedule 30 minutes and I might go over one of your invoices along with Sandy, who's our fiscal compliance officer, just to make sure I understand, and it's good to have those check-ins from time to time. So on-site monitoring visits, I'm redoing the monitoring visit tool that's existing. So I'll kind of be piloting that this year. So I'll come visit you to see how the program's doing, learn more about the new programs, and then I'll have a scheduled visit with all the organizations in grant years 2 and 4. And then the quality improvement efforts, as I mentioned, we partner closely with the Utah After School Network. They're going to talk in a bit about their technical assistance. Then we'll talk about that. And then program site visits will be ongoing. Obviously, we're not going to just drop into your programs. We really want to get to know your programs, get to know what your needs are, and help you improve the quality of your program. So those are going to be ongoing, and they're going to be scheduled. As with observations, the quality tool self-assessment will be due in November. And then in addition to the quality tool, there's some data, some demographic data that's collected, and that system will be open from March to May. All right, so we are going to turn the time over to Sandra Grant, and she's going to go over the new grants management system, which is coming and should be here very soon. So we're going to go over that. Do we have a question?
We have an online question.
Perfect.
Ray Terry is asking, can 2 different school districts apply separately and use allies or families as the fiscal agent?
I'd say yes. But Sandy, what is your take on that?
It's kind of a tricky situation doing it that way. One of the things that can happen is that if families and allies don't have any connection with the actual work doing in the schools, that becomes a big problem. So it's better that they have an MOU and you do it as a joint grant application rather than separating them. But it is possible. Okay, a couple of things. once you get your grant into Camille through the email, whatever, those of you that are approved will then have to input your budgets, your approved budgets, whatever one she approved, into the new Utah grant system. Okay, so that one becomes a little bit tricky. So one of the things that you're going to have to look at and be aware of is that whoever goes into the grants management system to put in that application is the only one that can touch that application from then on. Only one person. Now, your VA does your reimbursement request, which is a different login to this. But whoever goes in first to set up your application then becomes the only person that can make changes in this. Okay, so in your packet, I think Camille gave you a copy of the user's guide. But if you want additional help,
Okay, then. Thank you.
so if you go to the USBE homepage and you scroll down over here to where it says YouTube, and you click on YouTube, then you scroll down on the left-hand side to where it says USBE Fiscal Ops, this one right here, and click on that and scroll down again. One more. Okay, these are some webinars that were done here in the office to help show you how to do that grant system. So you have the user's guide, but this actually walks you through it, talks you through it, and those kinds of things. They are going to do some more of these, hopefully, and get them all up there. I know that they're working on them, but this is where you'll find them. The other place you can go look back to the Utah State Board and go up to Programs and Departments and scroll down to Financial Operations again. And then again on the right-hand side, scroll down to Utah Grants. This gives you a basic overview, but if you then click on the Grants Management System, here are hard copy informations about the grants, including the user's guide. It talks about the LEA roles, what you can do, how you get reimbursements, how you manage the people that are using your grant. All of those kinds of things are there, which is very helpful. If you have a question, you can go there and kind of get it in the way. They've also, I've noticed, added the YouTubes onto this site. It wasn't there yesterday, so they're updating this almost daily, so keep an eye on this when you do it. Now, one of the other things that is required when you do reimbursement requests is that you must submit your general ledger and time effort documents every time you submit a reimbursement. Okay? Then if we look at that and we still have questions, we will call you and say, I need more information about this line item in your general ledger. Okay? So it's important to make sure your documentation is up to date, and we may, if we're finding lots of questions on your ledger, we may do a full audit on that particular one, just to make sure you're spending your money correctly, all of those kinds of things. So your reimbursement requests will come to me and then to Camille, and we will both be looking at them to make sure everything's in order, you've done everything correctly, you haven't made real strange arithmetic mistakes, and you have no questionable items on there. So just kind of be aware of that. Remember that on your continuation grant review, it's important that you look at what your program does, what you said you were going to do, and does it work? If it's not working, this is the time to say, we found this, it's not working, we're going to try and change it to something else. And make that part of that grant so that when Camille and UAN go out there and they're looking at your grant, they're saying, well, you were supposed to be doing this, and you hadn't changed it in your continuation grant. That becomes a problem, because then you're doing something that was not approved. So doing those observations, doing those, I don't know, anything that you do, you know, talking to parents, talking to students, talking to teachers, those give you an idea of whether or not that program's working. If it's not working, then figure out how you need to change it to make it work. That's important, because if you want this sustainable, then you've got to have parents involved, you've got to have your community involved, you've got to have the schools involved, because there are other monies at the school that can be used for after-school programs. And if you're showing that this program really works and it does what you said it's going to do, they're more apt to say, okay, we can help you with this money to work on this. Okay, so just kind of be aware of that. Yes?
So you talked a little bit about the reapplication process, but can we also ask to have the plan amended midstream in the first 5 years?
Well, that's part of what that continuation process.
Okay.
Yeah,
In
years 2 through 5, yeah, you can. Okay. So when Camille talked about the carryover, that's 25%. If you want to carry over more than that, you have to send in a waiver request, and there is a form for that. But remember, once you send that in, you can only do that once every 3 years. So you're not going to be able to carry over lots of money.
Feds don't like it.
The feds don't like it. I don't. It's hard to keep track of.
But we understand programs are fluid and things happen unexpectedly. So just communicate with us so we know about those changes.
Questions?
The time and effort docs that are due each time we submit for reimbursement, does that need to be done each time, a new one with everybody, or can
Okay, time and effort documentations have to be done monthly or semi-annually, depending on the type of document it is. So if a person is working 100% from the after-school program, they're not working on anything else, they're not doing anything else, they're not getting paid from anybody else at the school, then they can do that every 6 months. And it says, I, so-and-so, say that I guarantee 100% my time and effort is spent in the after-school program. They sign it and date it, their supervisor signs it and dates it. That becomes the thing that you just kind of put in your file cabinet, because if we come and do an on-site audit, then we're going to want to look at all of those. So now if a person then is working more than one program, say they're doing an after-school program and they're still working at the school, then they're being paid from more than one possible pot of money. Then they have to do it monthly. And they have to certify that this percentage of my funding is coming from this money, this percentage is coming from this money, so you show 100% of their money. So what we'll do is I'll have Camille, I have some examples, and she'll send them out to you so you can look at them so that you don't have to create a new method. If you're a school district that receives Title I funds, they should already have one in place, and you can just use the same one.
Okay. Because we've never had to turn this in before, so I've got someone who is a teacher and my site coordinator at a school. So they fill out one if we turn it in quarterly, I would need to turn in 4 documents for that one person for each month?
Usually what we ask for is that you send one for each person, and then if we really think something's weird or strange, then we might come and ask you for all of them.
Okay.
But what we'll ask for is your ledger and one time and effort document for each person being paid from that fund.
Okay.
And we'll go over more of this in the orientation at 1:30. So for current grantees, but it's good to know for grantees who are new.
Okay, any other questions? Yes.
So you will not be using any more UCA?
No. All of the reimbursement requests will have to come from the Utah grant system.
Even for this grant application, this.
Even if you had a grant application last year and you've got carryover funds from last year, you're still going to have to use the Utah grants to do reimbursements. No reimbursements will be paid through UCA.
I know that there's that grant training for existing grantees this afternoon. Are you going to be covering these types of things this afternoon? Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, if you need to get a hold of me, my direct phone number is 801-538-7844. And feel free to call me if you have questions, anything. I will be more than glad to help.
She always answers.
And at one time, I was over this program, so I know kind of what goes on. So if you have any questions, really, truly, feel free to call me.
Okay, now we're going to have Matt Anderson from Child Nutrition talk about getting reimbursed for your after-school snacks, maybe if you want to do a dinner program. So, because that is a competitive priority point, to serve a healthy snack in your after-school programs.
All right, is that okay? I usually talk pretty loud, so if anything, I hate being mic'd. But I'll try not to yell. So again, my name is Matt Anderson. I work up in child nutrition, and I'm the summer and after school program coordinator here at USBE. And I think it's important to note too that everything that I'm going to talk about is kind of really independent of the actual 21st century grant. So even if you weren't awarded a 21st century grant, you can still participate on these programs if you meet the eligibility requirements. But of course, if you are awarded a 21st century grant, well, hey, these are going to be a great companion piece to the funding that you're already receiving. And even though sometimes with other grants that you may receive, food is an allowable cost of those programs, well, we would really love to have you participate on our programs. That way we give you reimbursement for the food, and that will free up your reimbursement to be able to use on other things, on other program enhancements. Just by a show of hands real quick, how many of you are already participating on these programs at your sites? So if you want to just kind of look around the room, a lot of people are. These are people that maybe you can ask questions to and go over some details and get some ideas on how you can incorporate healthy meals into your after-school programs. I only have about 10 minutes to go over 3 federal programs, so hold on to your hats, here we go. There are, like I said, 3 primary child nutrition programs that can provide snacks or meals during after-school hours. And we're including summer in that definition of after school for today's purpose. The first one is the National School Lunch Program, After School Snack Program. As I go through this, I'm going to refer that to the snack only program, so it's just a little bit shorter. And then we have the At-Risk After School Meal Program, sometimes referred to as the Supper or Dinner Program. And then we have the Summer Food Service Program. So I want to just cover just the bare bones basics of, okay, who can sponsor those programs, what kind of site eligibility requirements are there for those programs, and then, what are your meal options. First, there are a couple tricky things, because I would love it if there was one federal program that was just an overarching program with one set of rules to cover snacks, meals during the school year and summer. Unfortunately, like I said, there are 3 different ones. and they're all slightly different with slightly different requirements, and that's what can get a little bit tricky. But one thing they have in common is who can participate. And so these programs are for children, ages 0 to 18, really. If the participant is disabled but still working, towards graduation or enrolled in educational programming during the school year, they can also participate past the age of 18. How you can participate in these programs as an organization, there are several different options. So every program is going to have a child nutrition program sponsor, someone who's administratively responsible for making sure that the staff are trained, that the grant compliance is met. They're going to be the ones that are going to be working with our office or that you may work with at a site level to run the after-school child nutrition grant. So that might be like a school district, could be a nonprofit organization like the Food Bank or the YMCA, or you yourselves can qualify and be trained to be a sponsor. So, but someone's going to be doing that. And the important note is that that's also the person that's going to get that's going to file claims for the reimbursement and receive the reimbursement. And then if there's any pass-through agreement down to the site level of those funds, then that's just negotiated between the site and the sponsor. Okay. The other thing that every site's going to have is they're going to have someone who's providing that and actual cooking the food, and then you're going to have someone who's serving the food, and then you're going to have someone that's actually running the after-school enrichment programs, the stuff that the kids are really there for besides the food, right? The tricky part is there are a lot of different options in this. Is that could all be one entity. Like it could be like a school district, and they do all of those functions. Or, so for example, maybe at Pinnacle Canyon Academy, the school's the sponsor, it's the school staff that's serving the food, they're the ones running the activity, they're cooking the meals, they're filing the reimbursement, they're doing all of it, right? Or you might have the Utah Food Bank, who's working in Salt Lake School District schools. The district staff are serving the food, but maybe the YMCA is coming in and running the after-school programs. In that case, a whole bunch of different organizations are coming together and figuring out, who's going to be doing which pieces of these individual programs. And that's great. We love to see both of those. But just be aware, with whatever role it is that you take on or that you negotiate, you're going to have the responsibilities associated with that particular role. So as we get into this too, we're going to be looking at, first of all, which sponsors are eligible for which program. So I want to start with the SNAP-only program. Only school districts or charter schools that are participating on the National School Lunch Program can be a sponsor of the school-based after-school snack program. So in your handouts, you have basically all this information, and all this information that I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes is also on our website as well. So don't feel like you have to try to hurry and commit everything to memory here. But this is, so there's not going to be nonprofits, faith-based organizations or anything like that. They're going to be sponsoring this snack-only program. You got to be working with the school. For the most part, most of the schools in the state do participate on the National School Lunch Program, but there are a few charter schools that are not participating on our program. So you just want to check that first. That being said, every site, every school that does participate on the National School Lunch Program qualifies to offer the after-school snack program. And a lot of school nutrition folks or schools don't realize that. They think, oh, you have to be 50% to offer a snack. That is not true. There's two different versions of this particular program. There's an under 50% version, and there's an over 50% version. Okay? And so if you have a enrichment activity for children 0 to 18 that is not just competitive athletics, and you're at a school that offers the National School Lunch Program, we have a program for you. It's just a matter of which one you're going to do. Yes?
Point number 4 here about eligibility. The area where I serve for example, a couple of years ago, I was disqualified. Our after-school program is at University of Utah, and then there is not a lot of this 50%. But the kids which we serve, they live in the area where, but I was disqualified. So how?
Yes. So let me explain a little bit about how area eligibility works, because for your over 50% programs, so either the over 50% version of this program or the next two programs I'm going to talk about, there's this concept of area eligibility. And what that means is that the meal service site is located in a school enrollment boundary of a school that at least half of the children qualify for free or reduced meals. Okay? So the October survey is a real good starting place for that. If you're 50% on that October survey and your site is located in the enrollment boundaries of a qualifying school, you're going to be good as far as area eligibility goes. And eligibility for all of these programs is good for 5 years, okay, as long as you continually operate. If you take a break and you don't operate for a year and you try to come back, you have to actually reestablish eligibility. So how it works is that you may be at a high school that's only 20 or 30% based on its student enrollment and free and reduced price percentage. But that high school may be physically located in the enrollment boundaries of an elementary school that is over 50%. So in that case, both the elementary school and the high school would both qualify based on area eligibility. The high school is just going to use the elementary school to determine eligibility. Now, where this gets really mixed up, and it's a little bit hard, and so I usually draw Venn diagram type things to explain it, is that this doesn't mean feeder school. Meaning you can have a high school and you have all the elementary, all these different schools that are feeding into the high school, but that doesn't qualify the high school. Even though there's a school that's over here that's 50% free and reduced. Because this school's enrollment boundaries might be over here, but the high school is physically located over here, not in that qualifying school's enrollment boundary. The meal location where the meals are being served to the children must be inside that qualifying school's enrollment boundary in order for you to be over 50%. Now, like I said, with this regular snack program, this first program we're talking about, there's an under 50% version. The only difference is it works more like breakfast and lunch. As children receive a snack, they're going to be counted as either free, reduced, or paid, depending on their category. And then the reimbursement that the school receives will be one of 3 different amounts. The amount that's in your handout is from, I don't know, it's like 13, 14. It's old. The USC hasn't updated it on their website in a long time. But you're going to get 8 cents for a paid student, and 20 cents for a reduced student, and 88 cents for a free student, right? So you actually, as the kids receive a meal, you have to track who's getting a meal. So that's the under 50% version. And sometimes sponsors aren't as willing to want to do that, right? So when you approach the school and say, hey, I want to do this snack program, I know we're not 50%, but I think it's really important, they may say, oh, we got to track the kids as they come through. But I mean, most schools already have a system in place for doing that, and so just don't take that as you're not eligible, okay? But once you hit that 50% level, then you don't really have to track students that way, right? Because everyone, once you hit 50%, even on this program, then every child that receives a meal is going to get that free reimbursement rate, okay? And that's usually a little bit more easy to administer, right? Because now you're just doing tally marks. We're just counting the number of kids that are receiving a meal. And so there's a lot of details and stuff like that, and I don't have too much time to go into all the different details about eligibility. My big kind of umbrella thing here is that we have a program for you. If you want to know which ones you're eligible for, please contact our office. Let us work with you. Like I said, October survey is a starting point, but if you're told, hey, we don't qualify anymore, just give us a call and we'll double check it for you. Especially if you're really close to that 40%. Because for our programs, again, you started October survey, but we can use more recent month data. So maybe you were 48%, 45% in October, but maybe come April, you're at 50%. Well, let's use April data. Now that's for our programs. I can't speak for your qualifications of 40%, but But for our programs, we can look at more recent data. You had a question?
Is there a minimum number of students that have to participate?
No. No. Is there? So there's no minimum, but there's obviously, these are federal programs. There are going to be paperwork. There are going to, there is documentation. There are training requirements. So you do have to do that cost-benefit analysis regarding how much funding that you're going to receive based on the number of meals you serve versus the output of effort you're going to have to put in to receive and qualify for that reimbursement. And so it's really up to you to kind of figure out if it's really beneficial for you to do that.
Can you speak to the before school benefit? Is it the same as the lunch?
So there is so as far as these programs go, outside of the summer meal program, there isn't a before school meal program. I mean, really what we'd be talking about there is just the regular school breakfast program. You would want to coordinate with the school to provide that. Outside of that school breakfast program, these are after the bell rings.
Is that the case for summer programs as well?
So summer programs again, but you can do an AM snack, a breakfast, a lunch, a PM snack, and I'll get into those options in just a moment, and you can kind of see how that works. But the other thing is you can always try to work with your school or whatever. Schools can have multiple breakfast times, to accommodate for maybe a program that starts a little earlier than their normal scheduled breakfast. It's okay for a school to have a 7 a.m. breakfast and then later on have a breakfast a little bit later. If that makes sense. So I think we covered the area eligibility thing there. So the other thing about this particular program is that you can only serve snacks on regular school days. So you're not going to be able to do weekends or holidays or that type of thing. After the school day ends, means early out day, the school day is going to end a little bit earlier. Or if you had split session kindergarten, when kindergarten's over, that's their day in, right? So after school can mean kind of in the middle of the day for certain groups of students. Yes?
So with our program, we run a few holiday camps, especially when the schools are not in session, but all of our parents are still working. Do you offer any kind of food reimbursement program so we could feed those kids on a day where school's not in session, but it's not a state or federal holiday?
Yes. So that's going to be in the next program. Okay. Now, in these programs too, students don't have to participate in the actual program itself to be eligible to receive a meal. However, they have to have the ability to participate in that, right? And that's like really tricky, like semantics or something. I don't know. Like the idea is that you can't just like, hey, we're going to serve a snack as soon as the bell rings. Everyone's going to get it, but we don't have an after-school program for all the students. We only have it for a select group. Our after-school program is only for the chess club or the drama club or whatever. Then that's not really fair, right? But if you have an umbrella program where it's like you're offering tutoring and basically anybody can come, you're doing that in like the cafeteria or something, and you got teachers there, they come in, they get a meal, they eat it, but then they decide not to stay and work on their homework and leave, that's okay. Okay? So there's not necessarily like a strict like participation requirement, like you have to do X number of things today at the after school program and then we'll reward you with your meal. Like that's not how these programs are structured. All right, so that's the basic like just snack program, a good place to start, right? And then what I like to say is if you're over that 50% free and reduced, we can qualify you as eligible. We like to say you're eligible for this upgrade to the at-risk after-school meal program, okay? And in this program, some people call it the dinner program or the supper program. I like to try to get away from that terminology because supper or dinner applies like 5 o'clock and it's a homemade lasagna or something like that. But the fact of the matter is this is an after-school meal, so the bell rings at 3 o'clock, right? Your after-school programs kick off at 3:10. You can start serving that meal at 3:10. And then, maybe that's in a sack meal or a box meal or whatever. Or maybe it is a big full kind of supper or dinner. It doesn't have to be, right? It's just, it has to meet one of the federal meal requirements meaning it's going to be offering 5 components. It's going to have that protein, it's going to have that grain, it's going to have that fruit, that vegetable, not milk, right? It's going to meet that. That's the meal, okay? Now you can also, so you can do just that, or you can do that and a snack later on. There just has to be a reasonable amount of time between the two that you offer. The idea that the snack is important, and you're not offering a snack just to drive up your reimbursement, right? So the idea is that, or you can do the snack and then later on you can do the meal. Or you can do 2 snacks on this program. The cool thing about this one too is the eligible sponsors are schools, nonprofit organizations, child care centers, religious organizations, governmental organizations. There's lots of different people that can sponsor this one.
That's a good question.
Yes.
Yeah, on the after-school snack, does somebody, does it have to be a nutrition worker who distributes the snack, or are these things that we could have packaged and that anybody could distribute at the after-school program? Because I think that might be one of the holdups as to why my district hasn't, jumped on it yet. Does it have to be somebody with a food handlers and all that kind of thing, or are these packaged snacks?
It's kind of a loaded question because there's some details in there. So I will say, no, it doesn't have to be a sponsor staff member, okay? Like, so like again, the sponsor may sponsor the program. They may deliver the meals in a box and say, hey, they're in the cooler. Have your after-school snack staff go out there. They're going to grab them. They're going to roll them out, but then they're going to do the necessary paperwork. They're going to do the checkoffs. So it can be the after-school program. What I will say is that it has to be an approved staff member, meaning that they have to receive the proper training. Because anyone who's going to conduct any responsibility under this program has to first receive the training that corresponds with whatever their responsibility or duty is to the program. As far as a food handler or whatever, that's probably going to depend on your local health department. Pre-packaged meals, pre-boxed meals, and that kind of a thing. Sometimes health departments are a little bit flexible on whether or not the person distributing those needs a food handler permit. Certainly for any like open dish type, cafeteria line type thing, they're going to be a little bit more restrictive. So for that particular question, I have to refer you to your local health department. But like I said, again, and all those roles that we talked about, sponsor, site, that's all negotiated with whoever the sponsoring organization is.
Okay.
Okay. So just jumping back to this, the at-risk after-school meal program. So we talked about all the different people that can offer that. The site must have regularly scheduled enrichment programs that must be located in the school. Again, 50% free and reduced meals are located in a boundary which is over 50% using October survey or more recent data. Okay. And then the cool thing about this one, again, meal and a snack, 2 snacks per day, but you also aren't committing, you don't have to commit to doing a meal every single day. You don't have to commit to doing a snack every single day. And it can be Monday through Sunday so long as there's activities going on. It doesn't have to be a regular school day. Yes, please.
Okay, I've never done 2 snacks ever, but on Fridays, it's our 1:30 to 6. That's a really long time to just have our 1 snack. So if we wanted to offer an additional snack on Fridays, we would just keep track of who took snack the second time. And when we go to submit, we still if it's over 50% free and reduced school, then we just put the total numbers under that still. And then you're going to reimburse still the 80 cents or whatever per person.
Now, just make sure you know which of the 2 programs you're on. Because if you're on the National School Lunch Snack Program, you can only get 1 snack.
Okay.
If you're on this program, it's the Child and Adult Care Food Program, At-Risk After-School Meal Program. Real long name. It's a completely different federal program.
So we submit ours with the lunch people. Like we do it on the same form and everything. So we're probably the other one.
Which district?
Davis.
Okay, so they're on the regular National School Lunch Program. So, but they are an approved CACFP, but they would just need to switch that site from the NSLP snack program to the At-Risk After School Meal Program, which wouldn't be too bad for them. And then you could do a meal and a snack or 2 snacks.
Is that something that I would do? Is that something that the lunch manager does?
You would want to coordinate that probably with your lunch folks. And we can talk offline about Davis because, like I said, you're already approved. But it's actually your child care center.
So we just switch them. It's pretty easy to switch whatever it is.
That's correct. So like I said, that's the tricky thing, right? Because like, we're on the snack program. Yes, you are. Which one? And that's because, like I said, different requirements there. All right, so again, students don't have to participate in the activity on this one either, but they must be eligible, and remember those meals must be consumed on site. Consider if you do this program potentially marketing as a super snack instead of the supper or dinner program. It can help you with maybe your community engagement piece, your stakeholder piece. Sometimes people get a little sensitive about the idea of the school providing suppers or dinners, but really this, you can talk about it as like a really just robust or enhanced super snack to kind of maybe be a selling point to that. Okay? And then the reimbursement for the snack is again 88 cents, but for the supper is about $3.50. So for those additional couple components, you're actually going to get about 3 times the amount. So definitely well worth looking into that. And like all these programs, like I forgot to mention before, we don't have a specific pot of money for these programs. More meals served equals more reimbursement paid. And so it's not like we give that to you up front and then you have to figure out how to spend it. The idea is that you serve compliant meals, you turn in your reimbursement. As long as you meet all the program requirements, we reimburse you for those meals. So that's kind of a cool thing. So those are our kind of after-school program options. Again, we have videos on our website about it. There's a lot of handbooks, information. Just please contact us. I got cards in the back. We love to talk about a lot of different options as far as what we can do there. And so last but not least, I'm running way over time, the summer food service program. So we love the idea of this wraparound, year-round service idea. If you are able to serve meals during the summertime, we'd love to work with you. The interesting thing about the summer program, different than the last 2 snack ones, is there doesn't have to be an activity component to it. However, we would love for there to be, because it makes for a stronger, better, and more sustainable program. And so again, your sponsors for the summer food programs are schools, nonprofit, child care centers, religious organizations, governmental organizations. Sites have to be designated as low income, which means that area eligibility thing we were talking about. But the cool thing about summer is we can also use other data, like census data or housing authority data to put sites at, low income apartment complexes and stuff like that. Lots of different options for summer. The meals that you can serve are generally 2 meals or a meal and a snack, or for migrant or campsites, you can do up to 3 meals, so that would be breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay? Lunch and supper, generally, unless you're a camper or migrant, can't be approved at the same site. However, they can be approved at neighboring sites during the summertime. So, and then for the summer program, it can be basically any day of the week. From the time, the day after school gets out to the day school begins again. You can be offering these programs. You can do different meals on different days, and we can work with you guys to do that. One sponsor can do 1 meal. Another sponsor could come in and do another. Like maybe the school district's doing the snack at Liberty Park or the lunch at Liberty Park, and then the YMCA wants to come in and do a snack at Liberty Park, and we can do that. So there are lots of options with that particular one. Breakfast, you get about $2.25. Supper, almost $4, and snacks about 93 cents for that program. If nothing else, because I just threw all this at you, just remember that we believe strongly in the link between good nutrition and increased academic performance. We believe that good nutrition in these programs can in and of themselves be a nutrition intervention, can be an academic intervention. And so we really encourage you to not have these be a nice, optional thing, but actually a core component of your after-school or summer program offerings. And again, lots of different options. Contact us, and that's what we're here for, to walk you through and explain, what it is that we can do for you. Please.
Yeah, if the program that we're talking about is a year-round program, do we have to shift to summer reimbursement? Okay, so it's not, this is only going to work for a 9-month period. For the one program, you got to shift to the summer. So you are going to lose a snack in the summer.
Well,
if you have 2 meals, if you're serving 2 meals in the summer, you cannot also serve 2 snacks or a snack.
Well, unless you're over 50%, then you could. Because basically the really nice pairing is between the regular summer program in that at-risk after-school meal program.
You can't pair those together.
Right, you can roll, you're doing this one during the school year and serving a meal and a snack, right? And then during the summertime, you can actually upgrade that to 2 meals, or continue to do a meal and a snack.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So you
Let's
can have
say
that year
2
round.
meals in the summer. You also expand past the 2 meals to 2 meals and a snack. Or 2 meals. Okay, so you're limited at 2 meals.
Right, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and like I said, as of right now, it is a hard transition, if you will. You're operating one program and then you're operating the other. We try to make that fairly seamless as far as application stuff goes. And roll your information over and make that as painless as possible. But it is important to remember that those are 2 individual programs. So again, I would encourage you just to look at your options. The quickest and easiest way is to find an existing sponsor of these programs and become a site underneath them and let them do the administration, and they know how to do all this and run it. That's the quickest way to do it. But if you can't find that in your area, please don't stop there. Becoming a sponsor is a great investment, and again, you get 5 years of eligibility with these programs, even if you drop below that 50% later on. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you, Matt.
After for questions?
Absolutely, I am upstairs on the 2nd floor.
Matt, do you have a phone number, a direct phone number to your office?
I do, and so my phone number is 801-538-7682, and obviously my contact information is on our website, and I also have cards on the back table back there.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Matt. So much valuable information that, we really need snack or dinner options, and it shouldn't be optional. So connect with Matt. We're going to take a 10-minute break, so if you can come back at 11:25, and we're going to have a small shift in our agenda. We're going to review all the application documents, and then we will have our partners, Department of Workforce Services, Office of Child Care, and Utah After School Network present. So, and as a reminder, this is live streamed, so we do have some people who are online. Just keep that in mind. Sometimes the camera will go to you because it follows the sound, so just keep that in mind. And I'll see you back here at 11:25. Unfortunately, are under construction. They're being painted, so you will need to go up to the first floor to use the restrooms.
So definitely worth sticking around. I've got Kate here, and she's the actual
SPE Data Gateway has a lot of information on there. Discipline reports, information from your school improvement plan, if you're a turnaround or improvement. Sandy talks about really aligning your after-school program if you're in a school with the different title programs, so they know that you're there, you're all supporting the same goal, you want better outcomes for students and families, so aligning with those different title programs or other similar programs within your school or your community. So these are some sources to consider. And these are available resources you have. You have a teaching staff, or you might have teachers who'd want to come to your community center. So maybe not having them be in the program for 3 or 4 hours, that's a lot after they teach for a full day, but maybe getting their input in designing the program, designing a specific lesson plan around math or science, but getting their input and having them in that consultant role. And if some of them, you can pay them off contract to work for maybe an hour or so after school with the targeted tutoring program, whatever it is. Physical space, that's also a big thing. If you're working with a school, making sure you have classroom space, other space to maybe the gym space, space to have snack, to have dinner. These are available resources you might already have. Connecting with your local businesses to get both financial support, so unrestricted funds are awesome, but maybe they can do some in-kind things, or they might send volunteers over for that. Other local services available for contracts. If you want to bring someone in around prevention, maybe you can contract out with the health department. other youth servicing agencies in your community, connecting with them. Local colleges and universities, they often have service learning requirements, or people who, want to work with youth or want to know if maybe they want to work with youth as a future career. So really tapping into those. And then definitely your district adult education programs, because this grant, is to support students, but also families. I think sometimes we focus on the child, but we need to focus on the whole family situation. So what are the needs of your parents and families in your different communities? And what current resources is adult ed with your district or your community-based organization? What are they doing? Tapping into those so you're not duplicating, but you're aligning the available resources. Your English language programs, because you might serve students who have those needs, connecting with them. And then other volunteers, who qualified volunteers, or volunteers who have a real interest. Of course, getting them background checked and all of that, but tapping into these local sources for volunteers, senior centers, secondary or college students, and parents if they're able to. So these are all available resources that you might want to check out as you're developing that needs assessment part of your grant application, which is really the foundation of the grant, setting that stage for what you will do, what the program services will be. So I like this diagram. Sorry it's a bit cut off, but just thinking about that needs assessment. And always at the center we have the student and family needs. And then we're building the program services around that. We're aligning resources, and then of course the budget, the money. And the money can be used, we're going to talk about what that can be used for, but you need a budget. But thinking about all these things, but always having the student and the families at the center. That's why we do this work. And I know we can get bogged down in the new grants management system, and we have all these other things, but we need to remember why we do this work, and it's the students and the families. So keeping that in mind as you're developing your grant application. So the Southwest Educational Development Laboratory, they put out this great guide many years ago, and I think it's still very relevant about the 4 aspects of a quality program. So I'm just going to hit over those points. They work closely with the Mott Foundation, and it's a great resource for designing your program and designing an intentional program, an intentional quality program. So the 4 areas are program organization, academic programming practices, those supportive relationships, and achieving program outcomes. So with the structure, you want to have the activities that you're developing linked to school day goals. That's really critical. That's what we've been talking about, making that link. That's the focus of 21st Century, is providing academic enrichment, which includes aligning with the different standards for science, math, and literacy. So thinking about that, and then of course doing the balance. That's what I really push for, is a balance. It's hard to be a kid nowadays. It would be hard to go to school at 7 and then maybe your after school program goes till 6. That's a long day. That's why they need these different enrichment activities. Tutoring is great, homework help is great, but what are the different experiential learning aspects you could bring in that maybe we don't always get to do during the school day, but that could be really something you could do during the out of school time hours. So building those into your program. And as Matt said, building in snack, building in dinner. He's a great resource, so connect with him to have that just be one of the pillars of your program, to have snack or dinner option, because kids are hungry. I know as an adult, I'm hungry all the time. So kids, they might not have breakfast for whatever reason. Maybe they don't like school lunch. So getting them the services they need and having that balance. Staff, that's a critical piece. You want staff who are experienced, highly qualified, having specific skills depending on what their club they're going to teach or what area they're going to focus on, and that they're motivated by their colleagues, the students they serve, and they have opportunities for growth. So really finding your staff and who you want to help build your program, and you can pay them. It's great to tap into volunteers, but is that going to be consistent for you? Are they going to come every 5 days? Are they going to be able to help with summer? So finding your staff, and you can pay them. That's why we have the grant fund. So connecting with teachers, maybe other paraprofessionals during the school day, other community resources. So building high quality staff. So with academic programming practices,
Having really goal-oriented programs with specific goals. And so the goals for Guadalupe School for academic achievement are going to be different than Bluff Elementary and San Juan School District. They're going to be different what those students need. So make sure you're being very specific and that you're addressing those specific learning goals. You're aligning with the school day. If you're a community-based organization, you can still work hand in hand with the school district. And it's really important with this grant that you do. Because everyone has a place at the table, but it's just working out those partnerships. And then that communication between the program leaders, staff, and the school day. If there's been issues in the past, if you've had programming that hasn't worked, try to break down those communication barriers so you have a good schedule for communication and everyone has the same expectations. And then supportive relationships, we've talked about linking to the school day, having those frequent communications between school day staff and program staff. It's not always possible, but I would say a huge piece of quality is full-time site coordinators. If you can get full-time site coordinators, you can write them into your grant. That's a big piece and something that I would say is a key piece to quality. And that might not be something the grant can fully cover, but maybe you can partner with another agency to have that. So full-time site coordinators, collaborating on curriculum to strengthen the continuity between school day and after school, and then formal communication, schools having agendas, planners, homework logs. Question, comment?
Can you still call them full-time coordinators if they're coordinating more than one site?
Full-time, I would say yes, as long as you can, like that they have enough hours and bandwidth to really support each site. Okay, good question.
Hi, Camille. This is a question about the licensed teachers, which is in part of the application. Can you, or are you able to hire someone for a part-time part of the after-school program, or do they need to be at each school, you know, full-time, or not full-time, but at each school, or can you hire one for a couple of schools?
One licensed teacher for the whole project. How many sites were you thinking?
4.
4. As long as you can justify it in your grant application and it's very clear to the grant readers that they will be meeting with all of those 4 sites and providing that support, that connection with the school day, making sure they're embedded in each of those school sites will make it stronger so there's no question when grant reviewers are going through that. So building and maintaining relationships with the students, making sure your staff, this goes back to having quality staff, making sure your staff know how to work with youth. Sometimes in after school, we might get some college students or they're just not sure they want to work with kids and maybe they're not the right fit for working with kids. So really having quality staff who this is their passion, they're willing to learn, they're willing to grow, and they want to be a positive mentor for the students they serve. That they have clear expectations for students and that they use the students' input to design the program activities. That can go a long way with building trust and having more kids want to come to the program. They might, you know, parents, guardians might say you're going to go to the program, but maybe they have a vested interest. So when they're there, they're happy and engaged. And then activities are rotated, so it's not just the same thing. We're not doing gym time, you know, every single day for 9 months. That can be good, but having variety of different activities. So peer collaboration and cooperative learning, increasing the student motivation and participation by encouraging collaboration activities, having real-world connections, especially for middle school and high school, junior high and high school students, and then different grouping strategies. So, you know, you might not want to have your kinders with your 5th graders. So, thinking about that. And then family engagement. Really encouraging families to volunteer in however way they can. And if in your community it doesn't make sense, have parents engaged in another way. Having activities for parents, so if they're able to come, maybe them doing them outside of the work hours. So having a parent engagement activity at 4 might not be a great option. So consider their schedule, maybe consider weekends if that's possible. And then having your staff really share student success stories with the family. So sometimes we only talk to parents about things students need to improve on. But let's share the positives too. So letting the parents know that you're committed, your staff are committed to the students, and they're focusing on the positive. And then building your community connections, which can help with those resources. Grant funding is limited, and there's no guarantee in grant funding. So having, community connections where maybe you have a decrease in your funding in the 4th year, some of your community partners can pick up that programming so you don't have a loss in services. Question?
Yeah, so on the application, we're highlighting 6 of those partnerships, and obviously we would get a letter with all 6 of those partners. But are you still going to accept letters, if we're partnering with 20 organizations, can we get letters from all 20 of them?
So due to the quick timing of this application release, I did not want to require letters of support, but if you want to include in your application letters of support, you can. But I wanted to highlight the 6 key partnerships in that I know that many of you partner with so many organizations, but what are really the key partnerships? So you can include them. I just didn't want that can be difficult to gather so many letters of support and partnerships. So you need to have a school or district letter. Okay. That's the requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to see partnerships, if you have an idea of what kind of partnerships you're going for, but it may not, they may change.
Yeah.
You have such as, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and that will happen, and so whatever you think are your key partnerships for this school year, and then if you are funded, then in the continuation application, that's when you would update us on. Unfortunately, we've lost, the drum bus because of whatever reason. I hope you don't lose the drum bus as a key partner.
Thank you.
What are you allowing, Camille, then as attachments? Like, what is allowable? Like, I know in the past it's been like, okay, we don't want every graph that you have. I mean, all these. What are allowable attachments? So partner letters.
Yes.
Letters
of support.
Letters of support from
key partners.
Key partners and the school or the principals, but not necessarily parents that have something to say or a success letter or anything like that. So that's why I wanted. What are you allowing for attachments?
Yeah. So really, just keeping it to those partnership and letter of support type situations. If you want to send me the parent letters, you can send them to me.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. But not necessarily in the application. I'd love to hear about those and share those, but
okay,
not necessarily in the competition. So connecting with your community to do service learning projects, and then having students give back to the community so they feel ownership. Like, I live in this community, I'm proud of my community, this is how I help my community. And then, of course, achieving program outcomes, having accountability, having a system to collect attendance, behavior, grades, achievement scores, feedback from students and families, having that piece, having a system for that. And you can build that into your grant application budget. It's a lot if you're tracking attendance by paper and pen, that's a lot. So you can build into some kind of tracking system for that to collect those things. And then, of course, we talked about having those internal evaluations that are both formal and informal to make sure that you're hitting your project goals and outcomes, and you're getting input from staff, students, families, and the overall community. So you're demonstrating impact with that. These are just some resources. CEDL is great. U for Youth is awesome resource, and Youth After School Network, they're going to present in just a bit. So I'm going to go over the application document, and we can go over specifically your questions and what things could be included there. So please be sure when you're utilizing the form fill and the budget that you're downloading and you're saving that onto your computer, because if you open it in your browser and you start typing in, it's not going to save and it's going to come up blank. So all that work you did is not going to show up. Make sure you're downloading it onto your computer. And that you're using the application 2018-2019, which is a form fill.
So the first section is program assurances. Please read through those, make sure that you're comfortable with everything. If you have questions on these, let me know. And this is the signature page. And again, if you can't get those electronic signatures to work, you can submit this separate from your actual application. So you could submit to, this is the signature page. If electronic signatures aren't working, you can have paper signatures. Or you can have someone sign with a pen and then scan it.
Yes, Camille, I have a question. On the form fill, is there the limit of characters?
I think it's just the pages. I didn't limit characters, I just pages. But it's, you know, we do have, it was very controlled in the UCA, and I tried to match that just because, you know, we don't want too much. Enough to describe, but we do have some page limits for that. So the first section after the program assurances is organization information. So this is where you're going to put, if you're a new application, so you've never received funding for these 21st century sites before, it's brand new, new goals, new outcomes, or if you're reapplication. So the only people who would do reapplication are those who are currently received funds that would end in year 5 in the 2016-17 school year, or your year 5 ended last school year, so 17-18. Those are the only ones who would do a reapplication. You have existing 21st century funds that ended in these school years. And if you have questions about that, please call me. So this is helpful information for us as we're gathering our list. If you are funded, who we need to contact, because we will do an orientation with new grantees once we get all the award decisions made. So that's that information. And then the program site information is really helpful for us. This is where you're going through and at your specific schools or community-based centers that you're serving. This is where what you tell me what you're doing, how many kids you're going to serve a day, what your schedule will look like. This is really critical information. Again, if it changes, let me know. If you're funded and it changes, let me know about those changes. So program information, you'll fill out one for each of the proposed sites. So if you want to do 4 proposed program sites, you're going to fill out 4 of these sheets. And it's so you don't have to fill out all 8, only the number of proposed sites you're going to serve. So I'm just going to scroll through these other 8.
Okay.
Okay. So now to the key partnerships. This is where you're going to tell me and the readers about who are your key 6 partners. List the services they're going to provide. This should align with the narrative question. So you're going to list the organization name, who's the best contact information, just a brief summary of the services they're going to provide.
Have to be 6 or up to 6?
It's up to 6. No more than 6. So those really key partners.
Question? When you have a space there to fill in with the PDF, is there a requirement on font size?
I believe it's set at 11 or 12. It won't let you increase it.
So how about attaching graphs or charts or things like that?
I would limit the graphs and charts you attach.
I mean, what if we put them right in the form, in the space that's there?
If you can do it in the form, that's fine. Just everyone else is going to do, mostly everyone will do it through summer, so it's up to you from your perspective as an applicant. If you can get a form or a chart in there, but I would really limit your attachments to those letters of support.
Right. No, I'm not thinking of an attachment. I think of just putting it right in the
if you want to put it right in there, that helps illustrate the partnership, that would be allowable. So private school consultation, this is one that's been a little bit tricky, so that's required every year. And something we're going to talk about during the orientation for new grantees. So it's that you're connecting with the different private schools in your area about if they want to have their students or teachers and families participate in any services. So all you're required to do at this point is to consult and document that consultation. So if I come to visit you for an on-site monitoring visit, then you can show me that the consultation has occurred.
For us, we send letters to those charter schools sometimes, and then you don't get any response. But
So yeah, you can document that there was no response. And if you're curious, because I know there's many charter schools, they are available on the website. If you go to our homepage, one moment. If you go to Utah State Board of Education, the homepage, and you go to Schools and Educators, and you go to Utah Schools Directory, then you can find all the different school types in your area, and you can filter. You can say private schools only, depends on the city, and you can filter that down so you know who to contact in your area. We had a question in the back, and then we'll come to the front.
We only have to contact private schools that are in the site boundaries that you're serving, correct?
Yes.
And charter schools, we haven't had to in the past because they're eligible to apply, correct?
Correct. Okay, so just private schools.
Is there a certain way I can find out the private? I'm new, so the private schools within my area.
Yes, so if you go to this website, so if you go to the Utah Schools Directory, then you can find the private. You can pull up the private schools for, let's say, Davis District.
And Camille, do we have to offer services?
We don't have to offer services. You only have to let them know about the project and see if they want to be involved. And if they do want to be involved, then you'll work out that partnership. But it's not like Title I.
So it's them just saying, we're writing this grant, so we have to go, we're writing this grant, are you interested in being a part of that? If they say no, then if they want to, in the middle of the school year, come to one of our after-school programs.
We would have a discussion about that. If they initially declined to participate and said, not at this time, but then it comes up that they want to, then we could talk about that and see what we just want to do within the guidelines of consultation.
We had one school do that, and it was really hard because that person doesn't have a school ID, and in order to get snack and everything else, it has to be attached to a person's ID.
So that's what you want to do when you're designing the program, the new project.
Okay.
Question in the back.
Yes, so in order for the private school to participate, would they also have to have at least 40%?
Yes, yes. Thank you for that clarification. For the private schools to participate, they also need to be at that 40% poverty level threshold.
But we still need to contact them.
You need to approach them and say, we have this project, do you want to participate? If they do, you can make further plans. If they don't, you can just say, we contacted ABC charter school or private school, and they're not interested.
If they're not at a 40% level, we still need to contact them.
You want to contact the ones that are at a 40% level. I know there's a lot of questions about that one, so as they come up, just let me know, because I'm still getting familiar with that one as well.
One, what defines the boundaries that we have to open this up to?
The boundaries would, so what?
We're a Guadalupe school, and we're serving kids from our charter schools.
Charter schools are exempt.
Okay, so we don't have to open it up to anyone except our own charter school.
Yeah, because districts are the only ones that have defined boundaries, and those schools have defined boundaries. Charters do not have defined boundaries, so they are exempt.
Okay, so we don't need to fill out this form for our own charter school either.
So you'll want to say that you're a charter school and it doesn't apply.
What about for us, for example? We're not really a district.
How does that apply for community-based organizations?
It's primarily districts.
So it's primarily districts.
A lot of community-based organizations don't have boundaries either.
So now on to the actual application where we have absolute and competitive priorities. So this is where you'll need to list all of the sites that you propose to serve and what their poverty percentage rate is. And you will need documentation for this. So that is something you can include in your application documents you submit to the email. You'll want to have documentation, so you can get that from the USBU website. You can get it if you're within a school. You can get it from your school. If you have any questions about what documentation could be submitted, let me know. But I mean, documentation from the USBU website, a principal letter, reports from child nutrition, all of that information could be included.
And remember, that has to be off of last October's percentage.
Yes, so we're using, because we don't have those percentages ready, so.
Just any new grants they're looking, they can't just go and say, what is your school at? It has to be actually documented from last October's report.
So there's two types of competitive priorities. This first section of competitive priorities, all of the proposed sites, in order to get these 3 points, need to meet this requirement. So there's only 3 like this. So the first one would be all of the program sites need to operate a minimum of 10 hours a week and 32 weeks during the school year, and identify an alternative site if the site you're proposing to use becomes temporarily available. The program plan needs to include a supervisory role for at least 1 licensed teacher with the appropriate endorsement. And we will need documentation for that. And then the program will offer a healthy snack. Question?
I'm just wondering about if the operating hours include summer.
This would be for the school year.
Just school year, okay.
Oh, so 32 hours just for the school, like January to May.
So this would be for a full school year. We are late with the application, so this would be when you are running for a school year. What would your school year hours be? Are they going to be 10 hours and 32 weeks? Good questions. So all of the program sites, to receive those competitive priority points, all of the proposed program sites have to meet those requirements. So just keep that in mind as you're writing, you're applying. What's going to make sense for the readers.
Camille, how do I prove, for example, that the third point, that the program is offering healthy?
It's just if you're going to put that in your program site information sheet. So there's no additional documentation required. So there's only documentation required for certain priority points.
In the last cycle, even in the market, the last point, the grant reader maybe should see it.
Yes, and so we'll make that clear to grant readers that as long as you're selecting it in the program site information sheet, maybe you speak to it in your application. I would highly recommend that. And as I said, the grant readers go through a very rigorous training because they know how tight this is and how critical these services are. So we want to make sure if you do the competitive priority point, you do receive it. So now the second group of competitive priority points, these are at least one of the program sites meets this requirement. So program plan is submitted jointly by a LEA, so a school district or a charter school, and at least 1 public or private eligible community organization. So maybe you're partnering with your local Boys and Girls Club, with your local YMCA. That would be eligible, and I would write about that in your partnership if you're going to apply for this priority point, but we don't require additional documentation. And then the plan was developed in collaboration with interagency community councils, adult ed, community-based organizations, and parents and students. And then at least one of the programs will operate 5 days a week, at least 3 hours a day, and you'll again identify that site if it becomes unavailable.
No. Is that year round or is that school year only?
That would be school year.
So if our school year program's 5 days a week, but our summer school is not, we can still.
You can still apply because this only applies to the school year. And then if one of your proposed program sites is either a Title I priority or focus school, you can receive additional points. And I did include in your packet a list of the current priority and focus schools under Title I. That is in your packet.
So it's only these ones on this list?
It's only those ones on the list. That's what was on the website. So you get another additional point if you are in a rural county based on the map that's in your application packet. So that's how the rural will be determined based on that map. And then proposed program will serve 50% or more students from refugee backgrounds. And for number 7, this is at least one of the proposed programs will serve a school with an intergenerational poverty enrollment rate that is 10% or more, based on the annual IGP report 2017. So I have included that in your packet, the pages where you can find that rate. Unfortunately, it is not alphabetized. It's just based on the highest rate first and then down to 10%. So review that. You can also go to the webpage.
We have a lot of refugees in our site, but is there any school in the state that has 50% refugees? That's kind of a shocking number. I don't understand how it could be a criteria.
I think some of the community-based organizations will serve that high of.
Oh, I see.
I off the top of my head, I think it's City of South Salt Lake. They work with a lot of families and students with refugee status. University Neighborhood Partners, Heartland Center, they serve primarily refugee families.
Intergenerational poverty. We were on the list last year, but seemed to have fallen off.
It's the 2017. So that's what we're basing the rates on. Whatever the list is in your packet, and I'm not sure where Guadalupe is off the top of my head, but it is the 2017 rate. If you're on that list, then you can get the points.
Is that just elementary schools that are on that list? Because if you're writing for a junior high school, I didn't notice the junior high school.
It's elementary and middle, junior, and high school.
Okay.
Yeah. And I might check out the website, so you can there's a link and it should take you there. Okay. I would recommend doing that because the list isn't up to the time. So another priority point that at least one of the sites must serve is middle or junior high school students. So if you include a middle or junior high, then you can get the 3 points. And then also if you serve a high school. And if you serve pre-K or kindergarten.
Question on that. If you're, one of your sites is an elementary school, but you have a community site that's open to the community and is open to any age, you may be serving English training and so forth for middle school and high school students. Could you include that?
Yeah, I would include that, and when you're listing your proposed site, say, ABC Community Center serves, I'm just making it K through 8. So it's clear that you are serving that age group.
Camille, in the past, we've been able to use feeder schools average for the free reduced lunch for middle school and high school because those students normally do not qualify. They don't do lunch. So can we still do that for the feeder schools?
Sandy, do you know about the feeder school average for meeting the 40% poverty rate threshold?
Are you a community-based?
I'm a school district.
I'm in the same boat
We've
as a
been able to use
community
it in the
based.
past.
Yeah, you can.
So yes, and I'll write that up and send it out just for some clarification that you can use that feeder pattern for the junior high and high schools.
Would that be different for a community-based organization? Because I'm in a similar situation.
Are you serving schools?
We're inside schools, yeah.
Yeah, I would get the average of the schools that you're serving.
Okay.
And just make that clear in your documentation.
High school.
Then you can do feeder schools.
So Camille, 6th grade is considered middle school. If we're serving part of middle school, does that include that? I guess we would speak to the fact that 6th grade is middle school, and so further we serve it.
So your program will be K through 8, K through 6. As long as the core standards are the same, I would say yes.
Okay. Well, they are. That's why they switch in 6th grade. So that's why I'm.
Sandy, is that correct with 6th grade?
Yeah, some areas still consider that elementary school. Some have moved it into middle school, and there's some that look at junior highs rather than middle school. So it depends on how you define
how your district or school defines that.
Sorry, so just on that question, because I'm trying to wrap my mind around and make sure I'm understanding. In the core 6 through 8 6th grade is considered middle school, but some schools keep it. The grade itself is still in an elementary school, but there's still the curriculum and all the core is still middle school. So if they're serving a school that's K through 6, but it's that 6th grade that's in middle school, does that count as? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that in my brain.
So then they could get that additional point if they're doing the core it's still at an elementary school.
Right.
We'll write that out and send it out just so everyone's on the same page. Again, when it comes to scoring, I want to make sure everyone has the same information and that it's all consistent. So we will write that up about the 6th grade and the feeder pattern for the junior high and high school, just so everyone has the same information and can apply for the same competitive priority points if they are eligible. Thank you. So now we're on to the application questions. And the first section is your needs assessment data. So really fine-tuning this, considering these questions. If you have this data, adding it. If you don't, maybe talk about in the next section, which is more of the narrative, a little bit about that data you provided there. So this is the needs assessment. You can use some of those sources and those types of sources we talked about earlier. So that's your needs assessment, and as I've mentioned, that's a really crucial piece of this application. It sets the foundation for your whole project and your outcomes and goals.
Do we need to fill one of those out for each one of the sites, or is it just one?
So you'll fill out your application for the overall project. So if you're doing a new application, you'll fill out one for the overall project, include details about each site, same with the reapplication.
One of the things you have to remember about this part as you're getting into it, remember that the readers have no idea what your program is, what your community looks like. It's up to you to make sure that the information you put in there gives them a clear picture of what your organization does, what you plan to do, what it looks like. Because if they're unclear, you're going to lose points. So it's up to you to make sure they understand what your program looks like, what your community looks like, what your needs are. That's up to you.
Same with project design. That's where you want to say what you're going to do, designing your services around the needs of the students and families, connecting it to the Utah 21st Century Performance Goals and Indicators, which is in your application packet. It's also in your packet of documents for today. So making sure you're reviewing those, that your programming is fitting the needs of your students and families, that you're tying your academic enrichment to the Utah core standards, you're aligning with the school day, especially if you're a community-based organization, building that partnership and those inroads to the district, to the schools you're serving.
It's actually page 48, not 45.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I noticed that too.
Thank you. So project design, and then the principles of effectiveness. This is where you talk about how you're going to meet these different principles of effectiveness, how you're going to collect the data, how you're going to design your activities intentionally, and using evidence-based practices and curriculum. And then program evaluation, we talked about a periodic evaluation for this, how it ties to the Utah 21st Century CLC performance goals and indicators.
I have a question on that. Under the grant award responsibility, you talked about the after-school program quality assessment and improvement, self-assessment. Are we expected to write that into these pages on effectiveness and evaluation, since that's a critical part?
I think that could be a key piece to it. You need to make sure that you're collecting all the appropriate data from the academic enrichment piece and your partnerships in your community, but also focus on that continuous quality improvement cycle.
Okay, and is there any requirement for independent evaluation?
It's a periodic evaluation, and so if you independent or an external evaluation, you could talk about that here and how that would build the quality and how that's you can talk about that here. We don't specify that you have to do an independent evaluation. So number 5, as Sandy mentioned, we are phasing out the Utah Consolidated application, but it's still going to be up and running for some of the title programs. So this is where you would have alignment with the district planning tool. So anyone can still access the Utah Consolidated application, the public-facing side of it. So you'll want to go in for the districts that you're going to serve. So I will send you the link, but I'm just gonna walk you through it right now. So Utah Consolidated Application Home, you can get to it from our homepage on USBE, or I'll send you the link when we clear up some of the confusion around serving 6th grade and the feeder patterns for junior high and high school. But you'll want to check your district's plan to make sure that you're aligning your services with that, because we are still going to use the UCA for some title programs, at least for the school year. So we still need to have that alignment. And it will look different for the next year when we're fully in the Utah grant system. So you'll go to the home page and then you'll go to organizations. Oh. Okay, so you'll go to the home page, then you'll go to search organizations, and then I'm just going to type in Grand as a district, and I'll search it, and then it will come up. And then over here, I'm going to go to planning, and then planning tool. So we're going to go to 2018. And so then you can click on this under here, maybe go to 2018, and then local education agency. And you can kind of see the funds that your district has for the different programs, but then you'll want to expand these and try to align here with your programming around these. So raising student academic achievement, that's an excellent alignment with this grant. And then meeting the district goals. So make sure you go in here. If you have questions, I can walk you through this again. I'm not used to UCA, but we can walk through it together. So that's where that will be. So everyone will need to do this. If you're a community-based organization and you serve other districts, then you'll want to make sure you're writing about that here, how you're aligned. Academic achievement. This is another place for alignment. Social emotional learning, how you're going to use evidence-based practices to support this for whatever the needs of your community are. STEM and STEAM, so STEAM is new. You don't have to do both. You can focus on one or the other, but if you really want to do that, you can add that in. Inclusion, so this is where you want to ensure that all students and families and teachers who want to participate have equitable access. This is where the GEPA comes in, and you all have a list in your packet of GEPA and what that means. But just make sure you're creating inclusive environments so everyone can participate. So review that. If you have questions, let me know. But this is where you write about it, and then there's another question where it specifically calls to GEPA.
But do you have a link or did you get that to us already?
Yeah, it's in your, I know I gave you a lot of papers, but it's in your packet for today. Towards the end is what GEPA means, how it specifically applies to these funds. So then there's just some additional programming components. So college and career readiness, family engagement. This is where your partnership commitment should align with the partnerships you describe in the above, where you list your 6 key partners. Your timeline, so making sure you have all the resources necessary to fully implement this program, knowing this year we will be later, and if you don't have existing after-school programming, you might not start till January, and that's okay. You could talk about how you're going to do some summer programming. And what you would do to get that program up and going for the new programs. Travel and safety, so I did include a document that has yellow highlight around travel and safety. So the quality improvement tool has a great section on some best practices for check-in, check-out procedures, dealing with disaster drills. So check that out. I included that in your packet you have today. Program communication and management. Yes. So it's the one that is landscape, and then it has the yellow highlight. That comes from the quality tool. So program communication and management, this is a big section. Make sure that you're hitting every point in this. There's quite a bit. Make sure you mention how you're going to support equitable access for all participants with this. And again, you don't have to use all this space. I just wanted to make sure for certain questions you had some space just in case. Professional development, that's really key. We talked about how critical that having quality staff is, how you can build up your workforce. So talking about how those staff will be supported. And then continuation, knowing with this grant, as Sandy mentioned, the hope is that you're building other partnerships, you're tapping into other resources in the community to maintain the same level of services in years 4 and 5 when you have that decrease.
Question related to that. I don't see any necessarily points or things set aside for providing things that you actually donate or that you contribute
in kind.
Yeah, in kind.
So it can't be a requirement under the regulation for 21st century, but the continuation section is where you could write about how you have some in-kind resources and how that will help in your 4th and 5th year where you have the decrease. We can't require it, but again, it is great to have those partnerships. So you have some in-kind or whatever it is. So you could write that about that there, but we can't require it for the grant. So the budget, so this is your budget narrative. So this is where you're gonna talk about how you've intentionally designed your program, really showcase why you need these funds. If you talked about in your needs assessment, you have a big issue with, I don't know, some literacy issues with parents, that's from the needs assessment data. That's been something you really need, and you talk about that all throughout your grant application, but you don't mention it in your budget or it's nowhere in your budget. You want all of the pieces of your application to align. So this is where you would write about, this is why we need that based on our needs assessment data, and you'll want this question to align with the Excel budget form, which looks like this. So you'll want these two documents, or the application question and this document, to be in alignment. And so this is where you'll actually itemize your salaries. Like if you want a full-time site coordinator, you'd itemize that. This is the anticipated cost. And I know everyone might not have specific details, but say under travel, you just say field trip. Well, that doesn't tell me a lot here. Maybe you talked about it in your budget narrative question, but that doesn't tell me a lot here. That doesn't tell the readers a lot. So make sure you're telling your story and you're justifying why you need these funds.
Could you scroll down on that?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that is the place where I would type in all my...
So you'll type in, sorry, I don't mean to scroll so fast. You'll type in right here. So you only want $1 for salaries, and that will fill in down here. It will add for you down here. Yeah, that's how that works.
Remember that a lot of the budget is your best guess at this point. You know, this is what we think we're going to spend, you know, for these kinds of things. Once you're approved, it is allowable to change that budget when you find out what your actual costs are going to be. But those changes in the budget have to be pre-approved.
On the spreadsheet, once again, is it okay to insert a chart that details out, you know,
you can type in.
Right, but it's a lot quicker and it's a lot clearer. You know, when you type it doesn't automatically use tabs and things like that. You can't use a tab on that.
And if you can get it to insert and the formatting is clear,
yeah.
I would just be careful about inserting things in PDF and Excel documents, because as Sandy said, the readers have what they have. So just keep that in mind, but you can type in and it will pull down. If you have any questions about any part of the application, submitting things, we're going to clear up the questions around 6th grade and the feeder patterns for junior high, middle, and high school, let me know, email me. But I'm going to turn some time over now to some of our key after-school partners. First, we're going to have Department of Workforce Services Office of Child Care, and then we will have Utah After School Network briefly in our last 10 minutes talk about how we partner together and the quality improvement efforts we share. So Shannon Black will speak.
Okay. Good afternoon. I recognize a lot of you out there, and there's a good reason for that, because several of you, many of you, have funding through Department of Workforce Services, Office of Child Care, as well as funding through Utah State Board of Education. And in the past couple of years, as we've begun partnering more and more and working together, we have realized that our grants are very similar in terms of what our requirements are, the outcomes that we're looking for, and the way that we're looking for those outcomes, which makes a lot of sense when you realize that regardless of funding source, how youth are served and what makes a quality program that gives optimal outcomes for youth, for communities, and for families is the same regardless. So what we are working towards doing, and what you'll see a lot this year, and many of you saw in the last year, is aligning our efforts to collect data and to do our visits and our monitoring so that you are not inundated with 10 different reports from 10 different agencies asking the exact same things. So we are moving forward. We communicate very regularly. We now have the same dates for when our reporting is due. And where we share sites, we use the same report because we're collecting the same data as far as your mid-year and end reports, quality tool information, those type of things. We are also working really hard to align our visits so that you don't have multiple people coming in and disrupting the flow of your day and the work that you need to do, asking the same questions when we can consolidate those into one meeting and gather that information so that you can go about doing what you guys do best, which is supporting your organizations and your programs and the youth within those programs. So we just wanted to take a minute and just make sure that you guys knew that we are aware of the work that you do and how occasionally it can seem very onerous, the amount of data we are asking you for. It is important we try really hard not to ask for anything that would be extraneous, and that we are working very hard to make sure we're not duplicating efforts. Really, that's it. I don't want to take up a lot of time here. Many of you have sat through multiple grant orientations with me. So again, we appreciate that time. But really just, you should be seeing us a lot and you'll see us often together. Yes, I should say in a good way. And we want to be that to be in a supportive way, in a way that is not scary, because I think we all have the same goal, which is to help our youth be the best that they can be and to be successful adults.
All right, so briefly, we're going to have the Utah After School Network talk about how they support us in providing technical assistance, because I want to honor your time, so we will end at 12:30, and then if you are here with us, for your current 21st Century grantee, we will come back at 1:30. So Ben Trentleman's going to speak, or Kelly Riding, the Executive Director, is going to speak, and we will send out the slides electronically, and we'll have information for that.
Thanks, Camille. I'm actually just doing a really quick opening and want to introduce myself. So I'm Kelly Riding, the Executive Director of the Utah After School Network, and we have the privilege of working with all of the grantees who receive grants through the Department of Workforce Services, Office of Child Care, as well as through the Utah Board of Education. So they actually contract with us to provide the technical assistance and to implement the quality improvement model. So we are super lucky that we get to work with programs all throughout the state. So just super quickly, we have about 50 slides that Ben's going to do in 5 minutes, 20 slides. Really quickly, our whole goal is that we want to provide access. We want every kid in Utah to have access to high quality after school programs. And that's what we do. So this, really quickly, I want to introduce you to our team. These are all here today, or most of them are here. So there's me and Ben at the top. We have a professional learning system. We have 2 people who are in charge of that system, Emily Holdaway and Amberly Motes. Neither of them are here today, but we just want you to be familiar with who they are. And then we have a team of 5. We actually have 2 people that just started last week, so we don't have their photos up yet. We have a team of 5 out-of-school type specialists. Kira Coelho is one of our specialists. Chaz Pounder is back there. Give a little wave, Chaz. Angel Gomez is over here. And then we have 2 new staff members. We have Kristen Kanoki, and then we also have Eleanor Blankenship. So if you guys want to wave over there. So that wasn't very clear. I waved. So I just want to introduce you to who our team is. We do 3 things. We support programs and we provide or support staff programs as well as support programs, support staff, and supports after school in general. So with programs, Ben's going to talk about that we have a whole quality improvement model, and then we support staff by providing professional development, and then we support after school programs. Well, we are the voice of after school for the state, so we do a lot of the policy and the advocacy work as well. So I'm going to turn the time over to Ben, and he's going to talk about our quality improvement model. Thanks.
I won't go through all 20 slides, just to save you the time. It'd be like a Micro Machine commercial or something like that, if you remember those. So we do support programs and their quality initiatives and everything that you do. Basically, how we fit into this is, imagine you bought a car and the dealership sends somebody out to inspect your car every once in a while, but not to just tell you what is broken, to be like, cool, we can help you set the radio stations in your car to the right stations. We can help you find good seat covers. We can help you do everything that you need to do at no extra cost to you as your new after-school program owner. So basically, the big things that are applicable to you in this are that we do have our specialists that come out. We can help assess your program. We can provide an external evaluation to you through the observations that we provide. Those observations are geared towards helping you in your ongoing qualities development. So we come in, we provide an observation, we review everything that we have learned about your program together, and then we work together to set goals for your program. We also administer the quality self-assessment tool that Camille had mentioned before. That is open right now, and actually in the process of applying for this grant, I would recommend that you actually get in and look at the quality tool right now. If you are not familiar with the quality tool and you haven't had to utilize it before, it will give you a lot of information that I think will be helpful in your grant writing process as you're preparing for this and knowing what you're getting yourself into, I think. We also have a program information form. If you receive these funds, it would be due at the end of the year, where we collect demographic and program information on everything that you do there. We have a number of different resources that are available to you. I would suggest also checking out our website, utahafterschool.org, where we talk a little bit more about that and everything there. We've worked with a number of you in a number of different capacities. Several of our staff have actually run 21st century programs in the past when we were working directly in programs running them. And so we've made a lot of the mistakes that you're all about to start jumping into and everything. And we can help you move past those things and help you to develop a high quality program. So that is UAN 25 slides consolidated into 27.
That was great. That was awesome.
Great, so thank you so much for spending your morning with all of us. I hope this was helpful. Maybe marinate on this over the long holiday weekend and email or call me. This is my contact information. Sandra Grant is also a great resource. I don't know what we do without her. And we will clarify those questions we had. Those are excellent questions. That's why we do the Bidders Conference. So remember those due dates. Have your letter of intent submitted no later than September 7th, utilizing the Google form that will soon be on the 21st Century webpage, or it's in the various application documents or emails I've sent you. So please fill that out if you want to, if you intend to submit an application.
So do that, and then if you are going to submit, your application will be due September 21st at 11:59 p.m. to that email, afterschoolgrants@schools.utah.gov. So please contact me with any questions, and thanks for being here. Have a great weekend.
Excellent, fantastic. That'd be really helpful. And I know a lot of the programs will do well. My staff will do programs as well. So we should best of luck on this process and everything. I can speak very highly of them. And one of my new staff actually was one of their coordinators, and we hired her because she was highly trained, very hard, and everything that she's done. There's so much that comes into it. No, I think it would be a really great partnership. All right, nice to meet you. Best of luck. Let us know as soon as
I was thinking of writing in.
All right.